I saw it happen in slow motion. The email wasn't meant for me. Nora's billing rate to clients will remain at $300 hour, but keep her at $12 hour through Q4. She doesn't have the leverage to negotiate single mom, community college background, classic hungry immigrant kid syndrome. She'll take whatever we give her. My fingers froze over my keyboard. My throat closed up. The message from Garrett to HR had been accidentally CC'd to the entire development team. For 3 seconds, nobody breathed. Then came the frantic recall attempt. Then his office door slammed shut. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at my screen. 26 lines of back-end code blurring as something cold and hard crystallized in my chest. My name is Nora Vargas. I was 31 years old and had spent the last 9 months rebuilding Axion Dynamics' entire client portal from scratch while living on ramen and prayer. Before I continue, if you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're from, and please hit subscribe. This channel has been my therapy since everything happened. I came to Axion with big dreams and bigger student loans. My daughter Zara was 4 then, with medical needs that kept my insurance requirements non-negotiable. My ex had vanished to Uruguay with his yoga instructor, leaving nothing but a post-it note and child support payments that arrived randomly, if at all. When I interviewed at Axion, Garrett Pembroke leaned back in his chair, this enormous leather throne that probably cost more than my car, and told me they were taking a chance on me. My coding was promising but unrefined. He offered $12 an hour as a junior developer, promising a review in 6 months. "We're a family here at Axion," he said, showing me photos of company retreats I'd later discover only senior staff were invited to. "We invest in people who invest in us." I believed him because I needed to, because Zara's medication cost $1,400 a month, and our landlord had just raised the rent again. That first day, they put me in the corner desk with the wobbly leg, next to the bathroom where the toilet ran constantly. My computer was 7 years old and took 14 minutes to boot up. My training consisted of being handed a stack of outdated documentation and told to figure it out. But I did. God help me, I did. I stayed late every night, learning Axion's glitchy, fragmented systems. I rebuilt components nobody else would touch. I streamlined processes so ancient the original programmers had retired. Within 3 months, clients were specifically requesting me on their projects. "You have such a way of explaining complex things," they'd say. "Nobody's ever made this make sense before." I didn't know then that Axion was billing them $300 an hour for my time. I was still making $12. The 6-month review never happened. When I finally worked up the courage to ask about it, Garrett looked annoyed, like I'd interrupted something important. "We're tightening belts right now, Nora. The economy, you know how it is." He didn't look up from his phone as he said it. "Maybe next quarter." That same afternoon, I overheard him booking a yacht for his summer vacation. His 3rd vacation that year. I started eating lunch in my car after that, partly to save the $5 I'd spend at the vending machine, partly because I couldn't stand watching the executives order $200 sushi platters for their meetings while I rationed my daughter's applesauce cups to last the week. Things came to a head on a Tuesday in July. The office AC was broken, but only in the developer bullpen, of course. The executive floor stayed frosty cold. My shirt stuck to my back as I debugged a critical client issue, racing against a deadline nobody had bothered to tell me about until that morning. Garrett strolled in at 11:30, fresh from a golf game, looking right through me as he asked, "How's that Meridian project coming?" "They're our biggest client. Can't afford any screw-ups." "Almost done," I said, not mentioning I'd been there since 5 a.m. "Just fixing the payment processing integration." "Good, good." He checked his Rolex, a new one, different from last week's. "They're paying premium rates for this rush job, so make it perfect." Something made me ask, what does Meridian pay for rush development work? His eyes narrowed, but he answered casually. $3.50 an hour. Corporate rate. $350 an hour. For my work. My $12 an hour labor. That night, after putting Zara to bed in our one-bedroom apartment where she slept on the pull-out couch because I couldn't afford a two-bedroom, I opened my laptop. Not my work computer. My personal one. The ancient Dell I'd pieced together from parts found at university surplus sales. I started building. Not just coding planning. Drawing diagrams. Thinking like the business owner no one at Axion would ever believe I could be. I studied their client contracts when no one was looking. I analyzed their pricing structure. I documented their failings and inefficiencies. Every night, from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m., I built my alternative. I called it Luma, a client portal system so intuitive, so elegant, that it made Axion's platform look like it was built in the Stone Age. Because, honestly, parts of it were. I named my company Solaris Digital. Just seeing the words in my registration documents made me feel powerful for the first time in years. During the day, I kept my head down at Axion. I smiled when Garrett complained about budget constraints while wearing a new designer watch. I nodded when HR sent around a memo about postponing performance reviews due to economic uncertainty. The same week, they renovated the executive washrooms with imported marble. I worked harder than ever on their projects. Because every line of code I wrote for them taught me something I could improve in my own system. 3 months into my nighttime venture, my neighbor, Pia, a graphic designer who'd been similarly exploited at her agency, joined me. We worked from my kitchen table after our kids were asleep, her designing the beautiful interface that would make my powerful backend shine. "They'll never see it coming," she whispered one night at 2 a.m. as we high-fived over a breakthrough. "They think people like us are just grateful for the scraps." By month 4, I had a working prototype. By month 5, I had secured a small business loan based on the strength of the platform alone. The loan officer actually said, "This is the most impressive bootstrap project I've seen in years." I used some of that money to consult with a lawyer about my Axion contract. Turns out, they'd been so cheap and careless, they'd used an outdated template that failed to include a non-compete clause or any language about intellectual property developed on my own time, with my own resources. "You're clear," the lawyer said. "They have no claim on what you've built independently." At work, things were getting worse. Garrett hired his nephew as a development consultant at $85 an hour, despite the kid not knowing the difference between Java and JavaScript. Meanwhile, my request for a $2 raise was met with a patronizing lecture about paying my dues and the realities of business. The final straw came during a client meeting I wasn't supposed to attend. I was called in last minute when the demo Garrett's nephew had prepared crashed spectacularly. The client was Meridian Technologies, Axion's biggest account. Their CEO, Elise Werner, was known for her brilliance and zero tolerance for incompetence. I fixed the demo in real time, explaining the features as I recovered the data, somehow managing to look calm despite my internal panic. When it was over, Elise looked at me, then at Garrett. "Who is this?" she asked him. "Oh, just one of our junior people," he said dismissively. "Nora's been with us about a year." Elise's eyes never left mine. "You built this entire system?" Before Garrett could interrupt, I nodded. "Yes, and the previous version too." Elise handed me her card. Not her company card, but her personal one, with her private number handwritten on the back. "Call me," she said quietly. "We should talk." Garrett's face darkened as he escorted her out, his hand firmly on her elbow, as if to steer her away from me. Through the glass conference room walls, I saw him laughing too loudly at something she said, while she looked back at me with curious eyes. That night after Zara fell asleep, I called the number. I've been watching you solve problems in real time for 90 minutes, Elise said without preamble. That's more impressive than most developers' portfolios. What's your story, Nora? So I told her. Not everything. I wasn't ready to reveal Luma yet, but enough. About my background, my education, my daughter, my passion for elegant solutions. What's Axion paying you? She asked bluntly. I hesitated, then told her. The silence that followed was so long, I thought we'd been disconnected. $12 an hour, she finally repeated. And they bill us. She stopped herself. I see. 2 days later, Garrett called me into his office. His face was flushed with what I initially thought was anger, but later realized was fear. Meridian is concerned about some aspects of their project, he said stiffly. Elise Werner has requested that you be the primary point of contact going forward. Exclusively. He made it sound like an accusation. Okay, I said. What did you say to her? He demanded. Nothing about Axion. I answered truthfully. I hadn't needed to. She'd figured it out herself. For the next 3 weeks, I worked directly with Meridian, attending video calls that Garrett was pointedly not invited to. Elise and her team respected my input, actually implemented my suggestions, and treated me like a professional. Meanwhile, Luma was nearly complete. Pia and I had built something truly revolutionary. A system that did everything Axion's platform did, but faster, more securely, and with an interface so intuitive that user testing groups were calling it magical. I'd secured a small office space, nothing fancy, just a room above a coffee shop owned by another mom from Zara's school who'd given me a deal on the rent. I'd hired 2 other developers, both brilliant women who'd been similarly undervalued at their jobs. We worked nights and weekends, fueled by determination and discount grocery store coffee. Then came the day I'd been both dreading and anticipating. The day I finally had to give my 2 weeks' notice at Axion. I printed the letter on plain white paper. No fancy letterhead. I wasn't ready to reveal Solaris Digital yet. Just a simple, professional resignation. Garrett was on his phone when I knocked on his open door. He held up one finger, making me wait while he finished what sounded like a lunch reservation for 4 at a restaurant where appetizers cost more than my daily wage. Finally, he put the phone down. What is it, Nina? Nora, I corrected, something I'd done at least 20 times over my 15 months at Axion. I'm giving my 2 weeks' notice. I placed the letter on his desk. He didn't pick it up. Instead, he leaned back, studying me with something between amusement and annoyance. Let me guess. Meridian offered you something. Typical. They've always had poaching issues. He sighed dramatically. Look, we might be able to bump you to $14 an hour, but you have to understand, people with your background. I'm not going to Meridian, I interrupted. That got his attention. Then where? I've started my own company. He laughed. Not a chuckle. A full head-back laugh of genuine hilarity. As if I'd told the funniest joke he'd heard all year. Your own... He couldn't even finish the sentence. Nora, come on. Do you have any idea what it takes to run a tech company? The capital investment alone. I've secured funding, I said quietly. That stopped his laughter. What kind of funding? Enough. I wouldn't give him details. My last day will be the 15th. I'm happy to document all my projects and train whoever you assign to take them over. He was silent for a long moment, calculating. I could almost see the wheels turning. Finally, he sighed. Look, everyone gets frustrated sometimes. Why don't you take a few days off? Think things through. Starting a business is hard, especially for single parents without a support system. The condescension in his voice made something snap inside me. But I kept my expression neutral. My decision is final. I appreciate the opportunities Axion has provided. The corporate platitude tasted bitter on my tongue. As I turned to leave, he called after me, his voice suddenly harder. What's this company of yours going to do exactly? I paused at the door and looked back. You'll see. That afternoon, Garrett called an emergency meeting with the executive team. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see him gesturing angrily, occasionally pointing in my direction. The other developers gave me curious looks, but I kept coding as if nothing had changed. Over the next few days, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Garrett assigned his nephew to shadow me, obviously hoping to extract as much knowledge as possible before I left. The kid spent most of the time on his phone, occasionally asking questions that revealed how little he understood about what I'd built. 1 week into my notice period, I received a text from Elise Werner. Lunch tomorrow? My office. Important to discuss before things change. I replied with a simple, I'll be there. The next day, I told Garrett I had a doctor's appointment. He looked suspicious, but couldn't exactly deny me medical care. I took an Uber to Meridian's headquarters, a beautiful glass building downtown that made Axion's offices look shabby by comparison. Elise met me in the lobby herself, rather than sending an assistant. She led me not to a conference room, but to her private office on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Thank you for coming, she said, gesturing to a seating area where lunch was already laid out. Not extravagant, just fresh, healthy options. Consider it. Garrett called me yesterday, she continued, not wasting time on small talk. He was concerned that I might be planning to hire you. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He informed me that hiring you would constitute a hostile business action and could jeopardize our partnership with Axion. She picked up a water glass. Then he offered to reduce our rate by 15% if we signed a 3-year contract. And what did you say? I asked. I told him I'd think about it. She set down her glass. But what I really want to know is about this company you're starting. He seemed unusually rattled about it. I hesitated. This was the moment of truth. I'd brought my laptop, with the full Luma demo ready to go. But once I showed it to her, there would be no turning back. Before I show you, I said carefully, I need to be clear about something. I didn't build this to steal Axion's clients. I built it because I knew I could create something better. Elise nodded. Understood. I opened my laptop and pulled up Luma. For the next 30 minutes, I walked her through the platform, the streamlined workflow, the innovative security features, the intuitive interface Pia had designed. I showed her how it integrated with existing systems, how it anticipated user needs, how it solved problems Axion's platform didn't even acknowledge existed. When I finished, Elise was silent, her expression unreadable. Then she asked, one question. When can you deploy this for Meridian? My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. This wasn't how I'd planned things. I'd expected months of grinding to secure my first major client, not an immediate offer from a company the size of Meridian. 2 weeks, I heard myself say. I have the infrastructure ready, but I'd need time to migrate your data and customize certain elements. Elise nodded, then leaned forward. And your pricing structure? I named a figure that was 30% less than what Axion charged them, yet would still give me a healthy profit margin and allow me to pay my small team fairly. Done, she said, extending her hand. Send over the contracts this afternoon. I stared at her outstretched hand, suddenly terrified. This was really happening. Don't you need to discuss this with your board? Your IT department? Elise smiled. Not the practiced corporate smile I'd seen in her press photos, but something more genuine. Nora, I've spent 15 years in this industry watching brilliant women undersell themselves while mediocre men profit from their work. I'm the CEO. I make the technology decisions. She kept her hand extended. "And I want to work with you." We shook hands, and something shifted in the universe. I felt it. A redistribution of power. A rebalancing. "There's one more thing," Elise said as we finished lunch. "Meridian represents about 40% of Axion's annual revenue. Garrett knows this. When he realizes you've taken us with you." She didn't finish the sentence. "He'll try to destroy me," I said simply. "Yes," she agreed. "Are you prepared for that?" I thought about all the nights I'd worked until my eyes burned. About Zara asking why mommy was always tired. About the time I'd had to choose between fixing my car's brakes and buying her asthma medication. "I've survived worse," I told Elise. When I returned to Axion that afternoon, Garrett was waiting by my desk, arms crossed. "Doctor appointment run long?" he asked, his tone making it clear he didn't believe me. "Traffic," I answered, sitting down and logging into my computer. "Funny thing," he continued, perching on the edge of my desk uninvited. "I called Meridian to discuss their contract renewal. Elise's assistant said she was in a meeting all afternoon. With a vendor." His eyes bored into me. "You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" I met his gaze steadily. "I'm not privy to Elise Werner's schedule." He studied me for a moment longer, then pushed off my desk. "Just remember, anything you developed while employed here belongs to Axion. Anything." He emphasized the word with a jab of his finger toward my face. "And I'll be damned if I let some community college dropout walk away with my intellectual property." I waited until he was halfway across the room before I spoke. "Actually, I did graduate." My voice was quiet but carried in the suddenly silent office. "Summa cum laude. It's in my employment file. The one you obviously never read." His shoulders stiffened, but he didn't turn around. That night, I didn't sleep. I worked. I finalized contracts with Meridian, secured our new office space, and mapped out a transition plan for my remaining week at Axion. I also backed up every email, every document, every piece of evidence showing that Luma was developed independently, on my own time, with my own resources. Just after midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Watch your back. G knows something's up. Cleaning house tomorrow." The next morning, I arrived at Axion to find security guards at the entrance. Malcolm, a senior developer who'd always been kind to me, was being escorted out, his decade of personal belongings stuffed into a cardboard box. "What's happening?" I asked Jenna from HR as she hurried past, looking flustered. "Organizational restructuring," she said without meeting my eyes. "Garrett will address everyone at 10. I went to my desk, heart pounding, and began downloading essential personal files. Around me, people were doing the same, the atmosphere thick with panic. By 9:45, 3 more developers had been escorted out. At 10 sharp, Garrett emerged from the executive suite, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits I'd never seen before. "As you may have heard, Axion is undergoing necessary changes to remain competitive," he announced to the tense room. "Unfortunately, that means eliminating positions that no longer align with our strategic vision." He read from a list. 10 names. When he finished, security guards moved toward those people. Mine wasn't among them, and the relief I felt was immediately followed by shame. "Those whose names were called, please gather your personal items and follow security. Your final paychecks will be mailed." Garrett's voice was mechanical. "The rest of you, there will be a mandatory team meeting at 2 p.m. to discuss the new direction of the company." As the shell-shocked employees were let out, I noticed a pattern. Every person on the list had been hired around the same time as me. Every person had been underpaid. And every person had, at some point, questioned Garrett's decisions. He was eliminating potential allies before coming for me. I spent the next hours in a fog, mechanically coding while planning my escape. The 2 p.m. meeting had to be a trap, but leaving early would only confirm his suspicions. At 1:30, my cell phone rang. Zara's school. "Miss Vargas?" Zara had an asthma attack during recess. She's stable, but she's asking for you. The school nurse's voice cut through everything else. I'll be right there. I grabbed my bag and rushed toward the exit, almost colliding with Garrett as he emerged from the elevator. Where are you going? He demanded. The meeting. My daughter's in the nurse's office, asthma attack. I tried to move past him. He blocked my path. We're in the middle of a company crisis. And you're leaving for a routine medical issue? Something inside me crystallized. In that moment, I saw him completely. Not as the intimidating boss I'd feared, but as the small, insecure man he truly was. Move, I said quietly. Excuse me? He blinked, unused to being challenged. My daughter can't breathe, move. For a moment, I thought he might actually physically restrain me. Then something in my expression must have warned him, because he stepped aside. Don't bother coming back, he called after me. I didn't look back. At the school, I found Zara sitting in the nurse's office, her breathing stabilized but her small face still frightened. When she saw me, she held out her arms. I got scared, Mommy. She whispered against my neck as I held her. I know, baby, but I'm here now. Over her head, I met the nurse's eyes. Thank you for calling me. Of course. The older woman hesitated. I tried your work number first, but they said you were no longer employed there. Ice shot through my veins. When was this? About 20 minutes ago. Even as I'd been walking out, Garrett had already been erasing me. I signed Zara out and took her home. While she napped, exhausted from the attack, I made calls. To my lawyer, to my small team, to Elise. He fired me, I explained. Or, I quit. It happened simultaneously. Are you all right? Elise asked, concern evident in her voice. Yes. And surprisingly, I was. But we need to move faster. Can you have your IT team available tomorrow? I want to migrate your systems before Garrett realizes what's happening. They'll be ready, she promised. And Nora? My offer to invest in Solaris Digital still stands. I meant what I said about supporting women entrepreneurs. I hadn't expected that. A powerful ally who saw my value not just as a service provider but as a business owner. The emotion caught in my throat. Thank you, I managed. That evening, as I tucked Zara into bed, my phone exploded with notifications. Emails, texts, voicemails, all from Axion employees, current and recently fired. Word had spread about my departure and Garrett's meltdown afterward. He completely lost it. Texted Rohit, a developer I'd trained. Started screaming about betrayal and intellectual property theft. Had security remove everything from your desk. Even took your coffee mug. From Malcolm. Heard you're starting something new. Whatever it is, I'm in. From Jenna in HR. Just overheard G on the phone with lawyers. They're planning to sue you for stealing their proprietary technology. Direct quote, I don't care what it costs. Destroy her. Please tell me you have protection. I did. My lawyer had ensured everything was airtight. I had documented every line of code written for Luma, all on my own time. I had witnesses who could testify that Axion had no similar technology in development. I had dated records showing Luma was conceived and built entirely separate from my Axion work. But legal protection wouldn't stop Garrett from trying to crush me. He had resources, connections, and a vindictive streak a mile wide. The next morning, I dropped Zara at school and headed to our small office above the coffee shop. Pia was already there, setting up workstations for the 2 additional developers we'd hired, both former Axion employees Garrett had fired yesterday. Ready for this? She asked, handing me coffee in a chipped mug with Boss Lady written on it. A gift from her daughter to mark the founding of Solaris Digital. No, I admitted. But we're doing it anyway. The next 12 hours were a blur of focused work. We migrated Meridian's entire system to Luma, troubleshooting in real time, supporting their employees through the transition. By midnight, it was done. Meridian was officially running on our platform. I drove home in a daze, equal parts exhausted and exhilarated. We'd done it. Launched our company, secured a major client, and completed our first successful deployment, all in the span of 48 hours. The next morning, I woke to my phone ringing. Unknown number. Is this Nora Vargas? An unfamiliar male voice. Yes, I answered cautiously. This is Daniel Kiernan from Venture Capital. Elise Werner suggested I call you. We're interested in discussing investment opportunities with Solaris Digital. I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. Venture Capital was one of the largest tech investment firms in the country. I'm listening. We've reviewed the preliminary information Elise shared, and we're impressed with Luma's capabilities, particularly how it addresses pain points that Axion's platform has ignored for years. He paused. I understand you developed this independently? Completely. I confirmed. I can provide all documentation. Good. Because Garrett Pembroke is currently telling anyone who'll listen that you stole Axion's intellectual property, including our managing partner, during a rather awkward breakfast meeting this morning. My stomach dropped. And what did your managing partner say? Daniel chuckled. She asked to see Axion's patent filings for the technology Garrett claims you stole. There weren't any, of course. The relief was instant but short-lived. That won't stop him, I said. No, Daniel agreed. Which is why we'd like to meet as soon as possible. Today, if you're available. Having Venter's backing would make potential clients less nervous about Garrett's threats. We arranged to meet that afternoon. I called my neighbor to watch Zara after school and headed to our office to prepare with Pia and the team. I was reviewing our pitch deck when my lawyer called. Axion just filed suit, he said without preamble. They're alleging theft of trade secrets, breach of contract, and tortious interference with business relationships. Despite expecting this, the reality of being sued hit hard. What do we do? First, don't panic. Their case is weak. Second, send me all your documentation showing Luma's independent development. And third, his voice softened slightly. Prepare for this to get ugly. Garrett is painting you as a disgruntled employee who deliberately stole from the company that gave you a chance when no one else would. The familiar narrative made my blood boil. The ungrateful immigrant. The charity case. Who didn't know her place. Let me guess, I said bitterly. He's playing the victim? Poor successful businessman targeted by scheming former employee? Something like that. My lawyer confirmed. But we have truth on our side. And apparently, you have Elise Werner, which counts for a lot. After hanging up, I sat quietly, absorbing the reality. I was being sued. My fledgling company was under attack. The safe path would be to settle, to give Garrett something to satisfy his ego, to make the problem go away. But that would mean admitting I'd done something wrong, that I had something to apologize for, and I didn't. When I arrived at Venture Capital's offices that afternoon, I was surprised to find not just Daniel waiting, but Elise as well, along with 4 other people representatives from companies I recognized as Axion clients. Hope you don't mind the expanded audience, Daniel said, shaking my hand. Word has spread about Luma, and these folks were interested in seeing what prompted Garrett's rather spectacular meltdown at the Chamber of Commerce lunch today. Elise elaborated. He accused me publicly of corporate espionage for working with you, then threatened everyone in the room with legal action if they so much as took a meeting with Solaris Digital. She smiled tightly. It had the opposite effect of what he intended. Nothing makes CEOs more curious than being told they're not allowed to look at something. For the next 2 hours, I demonstrated Luma, answering technical questions and outlining our vision for the platform. When I finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Then one by one, They began to speak. "We've been unhappy with Axion for years," said a woman from a healthcare company. "But there weren't alternatives that met our security requirements. Until now. Garrett promised us an updated platform 18 months ago," added a man from a manufacturing firm. "We're still waiting, and still paying premium rates for outdated technology." By the end of the meeting, 2 companies had scheduled migrations to Luma. Venture capital offered investment terms that made my head spin. And most surprisingly, a major tech publication wanted to interview me about the next big disruption in enterprise software. As we were leaving, Elise pulled me aside. "Garrett just called an emergency board meeting at Axion," she told me. "One of their board members texted me. Apparently, they just found out that along with Meridian, 3 other major clients are considering leaving." "Because of Luma?" I asked. "Because of you," she corrected. "Your story is resonating. The undervalued employee who built something better while being paid poverty wages. It's hitting a nerve, especially with other companies worried about their own talented employees walking out the door." The next week passed in a surreal blur. Our tiny office became command central as we brought on more staff. Many of them, former Axion employees. We migrated 2 more clients to Luma. The investment from venture capital allowed us to lease proper office space and upgrade our infrastructure. Meanwhile, Axion's lawsuit progressed. My lawyer filed our response, complete with exhaustive documentation proving Luma's independent development. 3 former Axion executives submitted affidavits confirming the company had no similar technology in development and that Garrett had, in fact, rejected proposals for such improvements as unnecessary expenses. Then came the article. The tech publication's piece about Solaris Digital went viral, picked up by mainstream business outlets. The headline said it all. "Underpaid developer builds better system at night. Takes clients with her when former employer refuses raise." The story detailed my journey from $12 an hour developer to founder and CEO, contrasting my working conditions at Axion with Garrett's lifestyle. Someone had leaked his email about my immigrant kid syndrome and lack of leverage, which featured prominently in the article. Public opinion swung decisively in my favor. Pay your developers started trending. Other undervalued tech workers began sharing their stories. The conversation about exploitation in the industry exploded. Garrett, predictably, didn't take it well. He gave a disastrous interview where he defended paying me $12 an hour while billing $300 for my time as standard industry practice and suggested I should have been grateful for the opportunity. The backlash was immediate and fierce. 3 weeks after I walked out of Axion, I received an unexpected email from Jenna in HR. "Board meeting just ended. G was suspended pending investigation into company practices. They're bringing in interim management. Thought you should know." That same day, my lawyer called with news. Axion wanted to settle the lawsuit. Their conditions? We would acknowledge they had no legitimate claim. They would issue a public apology. And, most surprisingly, they would pay damages for defamation. "They're cutting Garrett loose," my lawyer explained. The board saw the writing on the wall. The publicity was killing them. Clients were fleeing, and their own legal team admitted the case was unwinnable. I sat in our new office, a real office with actual working air conditioning and chairs that didn't wobble, and tried to process how completely my life had changed in under a month. "What do you want to do?" Pia asked quietly. She'd been with me from the beginning, working at my kitchen table when Luma was just an idea born of desperation and rage. What did I want? Revenge had stopped being my primary motivation somewhere along the way. What drove me now was building something that reflected my values: fair compensation, respect for people's time and talent, technology that actually solved problems instead of creating new ones. I want to accept the settlement, I decided, but with one condition. 2 days later, I sat across from Axion's board of directors minus Garrett, who was conspicuously absent. The interim CEO, a woman named Margot with decades of industry experience, led the discussion. "We accept your condition," she said finally, "though it's unusual." So was paying a senior developer $12 an hour, while billing clients $300 for her time. I replied evenly. My condition had been simple. As part of the settlement, Axion would engage a third-party firm to review all employee compensation, correct any disparities, and provide back pay where appropriate. They would also implement transparent salary bands and eliminate the practice of forbidding employees from discussing their compensation. As I stood to leave, Margot asked one last question. "Why this condition? You could have asked for more money, more favorable terms for Solaris. Why focus on Axion's current employees?" I thought about all the Noras still out there, still undervalued, still afraid to speak up. "Because change has to start somewhere," I said simply. 6 months later, Solaris Digital had grown to 30 employees. We'd moved to a larger office in a building downtown. Not ostentatious, but comfortable, with a daycare center on the first floor where Zara spent her afternoons after school, often visiting my office to draw pictures at the small desk I'd set up for her. Our client list had expanded to include companies that had previously been exclusive to Axion. Luma was recognized as the most innovative platform in its class, with features our competitors scrambled to copy. Garrett had resigned to pursue other opportunities, according to Axion's press release. Industry gossip suggested no tech company would touch him, his reputation permanently damaged by the scandal and his handling of it. Last I heard, he was trying to rebrand himself as a business consultant in another state. Axion itself had survived, under new leadership that implemented the changes we'd demanded. Former colleagues told me the company culture had transformed, with transparent compensation and proper recognition of contributions. As for me, I paid off my student loans, moved Zara to an apartment where she had her own bedroom, started a college fund for her, and most importantly, created a company where people were valued for their contributions, not exploited for their vulnerabilities. Sometimes I think about that accidental email, the one where Garrett dismissed me as having classic hungry immigrant kid syndrome without leverage to negotiate. He'd been right about one thing. I was hungry, but not just for money or success. I was hungry for dignity, for recognition of my worth, for the opportunity to build something that reflected my values rather than someone else's greed. And that's exactly what I did. If you're watching this and you're being undervalued, remember, your worth isn't determined by what someone is willing to pay you. It's in what you can create, in the problems you can solve, in the vision you bring to the world. Have you ever been undervalued at work? What did you do about it? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if my story resonated with you, please subscribe to this channel. I share new experiences about business, technology, and finding your worth in a world that often tries to minimize it. Remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's creation. Building something so undeniably excellent that those who underestimated you are forced to watch your success from the sidelines.